Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1990's Represent. We're starting our first cycle of 1995, and we're opening this first cycle with Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morissette, one of my favorite albums of all time, and in my opinion, one of, at least for me personally, one of the most important albums ever. And that's just for me personally. 1995 had a lot of really good music that we'll be covering in future cycles of this year. But this is one of the three albums in 1995. The other two are Garbage's self-titled debut and the Foo Fighters' self-titled debut are probably the three, including Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, probably the three albums that kind of like have most kind of like defined my taste in music in general. So I don't know where I would be like at least like musically without these three albums because I think like 1995 is the year I first started taking music very seriously, and these three albums, two of them are debuts. Garbage and Foo Fighters had debut albums. This Alanis Morissette album technically isn't a debut album. She had two albums prior to this, but I've kind of always said I have always felt that this is such a departure from her other two albums that it might as well just be a debut album anyway. Because the other two albums, I think it was Alanis and The Time Is Here. Let me actually just get my notes open and we can figure out what the name of that album was. Yeah, so Alanis and Now Is the Time were her first two Canadian albums, and those were more like dance pop albums. So when it came time to release Jagged Little Pill, it's definitely more of a rock album, more of an alternative album. And like I said just a little bit ago, it might as well be a debut album at that point because it's so different from those other two. But yeah, we'll cover the Foo Fighters, we'll cover Garbage in future cycles. But I think out of the three, this was the album that I gravitated to the most, at least that year. Um, I think overall my favorite two bands are Garbage and the Foo Fighters, with Alanis Morissette probably being like right behind them. But yeah, this album was just so kind of monumental when it came out. I felt it was appropriate to do this as the first part of the cycle of our first 1995 cycle. So we have our notes here. I'm going to go through these, and then we're just going to discuss the kind of the album and some other information about that. So again, this is Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morissette, first released June 13th, 1995. Third studio album, like I said, technically not a debut, but it might as well be. Very, again, stylistically, basically very opposite from Alanis and Now Is the Time. It was produced by Glenn Ballard, so she had moved to LA, like I think in like 1994. It kind of got paired up with Glenn Ballard, and they basically like started having like very just amazing chemistry as like a songwriter and like a producing team. So yeah, just produced I think one of the greatest albums of all time. It's also one of the best-selling albums of all time. I think it. And when I was doing my research for this, has sold at the very least 33 million copies. That's just incredible. I remember picking this up, basically joining Columbia House because, like I said, 1995 first started taking music very seriously. Up to that point, I would be like, "Oh, it's on the radio, cool," or I'll like borrow like other like I didn't really have that much musical taste before that. Like I listened to some rap music and maybe like soundtracks to movies and things like that, and whatever was on the radio. But then 1995 came around, and I just started something clicked, and I just started taking music much more seriously. So obviously, not having a ton of money, I started a Columbia House subscription, and this is one of the albums I picked because I think it was like 8 albums for $1. I think they weren't doing the penny thing anymore. I think it was like $1. Um, Basically, 8 albums for $1. You paid shipping on it. The shipping was kind of pretty high. It was like $8 for shipping. But the contract thing was basically 8 albums for $1, pay shipping, and then just buy. I think it was like 1 or 2 albums at full price, and that's all you had to do. And then you could buy additional albums if you wanted to. But yeah, this Alanis Morissette album was in my initial 8, as was Garbage's debut and the Foo Fighters debut. I think I got like Hootie and the Blowfish's like cracked review through that. Warren G's Regulate was another one. I don't recall exactly what else there was. But yeah, basically like having like somewhat limited like money, like not really having a job at the time because I was just starting high school. It was a great way to kind of just start a music collection, and this was the first album I put on that because they actually, I think I pulled it out of like a TV guide or something. It was like a TV guide pull out. You would basically just check the albums that you wanted, and I think you like attached the dollar and you mailed it in with your address, and you got those albums. Like it was like a couple weeks later, they all showed up. But yeah, that this was on that list, and I still have the CD somewhere. It's probably like in like a CD wallet or something like that. And the case is obviously I still have the case as well. But again, one of the best-selling albums of all time. Like I said, 33 million copies is pretty insane. Um, if you all have HBO Max or Max, whatever they're calling it now, they did a documentary about this album called Jagged, which I thought was really good. It was about like kind of like just her early career leading up to Jagged Little Pill, which I kind of covered very quickly. The kind of writing process and recording process for the album, and then how the album, like how You Ought to Know, just like started getting like airplay like immediately, and kind of just started really blowing up. And then the subsequent, like I think, world tour from 1995 through I think the end of 1996. And like they have various interviews from obviously Glenn Alanis and Glenn Ballard are in there. Taylor Hawkins, who actually got his start or one of his starts with Alanis Morissette, actually just got back from Laguna Beach, which is Taylor Hawkins' hometown. It would have been his birthday on the 17th, so got together with some friends, celebrated his birthday. It was really cool. But like I said, first started recognizing him through his kind of like live performances, like on MTV or like things like that, or award shows with Alanis Morissette. Just got this really good vibe off of him. Be like, this guy's a really good drummer, and I think he just looks like an awesome dude too. And of course he was. But we'll probably talk about that more in a future video. Probably not in this series because um, might do that for one of the new albums because there's some Taylor Hawkins albums I have not fully listened to yet, so I might do some of those for my new album series. Maybe we'll be doing that in like very shortly. But yeah, like first notice him there. But yeah, the Jagged documentary is really good. It's a really good celebratory look at the album. I think for some reason when it came out, Alanis was upset about the documentary. I don't know exactly what was in the documentary that was upsetting because I felt the documentary painted everything in a fairly positive light. Um, about like just like celebrating the album and like the importance of the album, and then kind of just showing like all these cool like interview clips from during the tour, and then also interviews with like her bandmates, like I said, Chris Cheney and Taylor Hawkins and Glenn Ballard. He's not a bandmate, but her producers, various radio personalities that had like helped, that had basically like been at those radio stations that were playing those singles. Shirley Manson is on the documentary as well for like a few like small like little snippets. But yeah, the Jagged documentary, if you have Max, I would definitely recommend checking it out if it's still available. I think it should still be on there, but I watched it. I watched it once when it came out and I haven't seen it again. Um, but like I said, I knew there was some stuff that she kind of objected to. I'm not exactly sure what that was though, but it's definitely worth checking out. The album is incredibly critically acclaimed. Let me actually pull up some quick reviews here. But very positive reviews. So AllMusic looks like it gives it I think it's a 4. Let me see, 4.5 out of 5. You have the Los Angeles Times giving it a 3.5 out of 4. You have Rolling Stone Album Guide giving it a 4.5 out of 5. USA Today gave it a 3 out of 4. I think it showed up at one place on one of Rolling Stone's, like top albums list. Like it was like it was very highly rated on that album list as well. It won several Grammys. I believe it won 4 Grammys in the following year for Grammy Awards in 1996. And those Grammys included, I think, Best Rock Album, Best Rock Song for I think You Ought to Know, Best Female Rock Performance, which I think was also You Ought to Know, and then also the big one, Album of the Year. So But basically, like I think that year she had won more like had won the most Grammys out of any one artist that year with four of them, including Album of the Year, which is pretty good. I remember she also won a bunch of other music awards. I don't remember like what the it wasn't the Grammys, but it was another one of the uh, maybe like less well known awards. But I think she won Album of the Year at like another award show too. I used to have that award ceremony on tape back from like because I remember like recording it off the TV in 1996. I don't think. Well, obviously, I might still have the tape, but I don't have a way to play it anymore because I don't no longer have a VCR, unfortunately. Um, Listen, Grammys. She was also the first Canadian artist to get double diamond sales figures off of this album, which is pretty impressive. I remember she was on Modern Rock Live in the fall of 1995 to kind of promote the album. They had a call-in number. I tried to call in many times. Always got a busy signal. I think I got like an actual like ringtone like a couple times, but it just never got answered, unfortunately. So I didn't get to ask my question to her on the air. I don't even remember what the question was going to be. It was just would have been cool just to be part of that like radio broadcast. I unfortunately don't think there is like an archive of any of the Modern Rock Live stuff that I can find. It would be really cool to find like the episode that she was on, just to kind of have it because it's got some live performances on there. I remember when they did I think it was the single for Ironic, like the CD single. It included as like a B side or like a second track or whatever. It included one of the performances from that thing. Let me actually pull it up because I have a digital version of that album. Let me just go to my alternative rock collection here, Alanis Morissette. It was singles, and I think it's let's see, was it All I Really Want? You Want to Know? Yeah, I think it was the if it's the one I'm thinking of, it was basically the ironic single with I think Forgiven, not the Doctor and Wake Up because I know she did those on that show, and it was definitely wasn't that. It was ironic, I think. Was that the same one? Yeah, so I think that it was the one where it was on Modern Rock Live, where she basically like it was basically like an interview show with a few live performances spread throughout the show. I had that episode on tape at one point, like a cassette tape. I think I probably recorded over it. I still have those tapes around somewhere if it does exist. But right now, my tape player, I'm looking at it right now, is kind of busted. It works, but you basically had to tape the door in. It's like definitely a very old tape player. But I did have that episode kind of on cassette tape. I remember like playing that in like a Walkman and just listening to those. At the time, it was really cool because it was live versions of those songs that if you didn't listen to the performance on the radio on Modern Rock Live, you wouldn't have heard them until they did the CD single. And I think the CD single came out like several months later because I remember that performance was maybe like November of 1995, and I definitely want to say the CD single I think came out maybe in like the spring of like 1996, maybe like February. I don't remember exactly, like January, February maybe. So it was at least 2 months difference. But a very cool just thing there. The kind of theme and vibe of the album, which I think somewhat kind of worked against her when she did other albums not in the same style. And it's definitely like not her fault because like it's very kind of like angry, like somewhat empowering because it's all like about just like emotions and like relationships that like haven't worked out. Like if you listen to You Want to Know, it's all about that kind of stuff. And basically stuff that like it was quoted as saying stuff that she would probably not even just talk about in like a normal conversation, and the only way to get these emotions out was through this music. Like I remember, like in what I think it may have been in a documentary, but I had read it before that, like years ago, when she like first moved to LA. Basically, maybe like not the first day there, maybe it was like she basically just got robbed at gunpoint and like was not in a very good like mental state at that time. And then I think like she basically like got those songs kind of like onto the record, got them out of her system, moved on to doing her second album. Sorry, excuse me, which is a little stylistically different. It's a little more upbeat. It's not as like angry necessarily. And I think a lot of people were like they were kind of disappointed that it had shifted in that direction. And I think there was an audiobook I was listening to off of maybe like an Apple like audiobook of hers where she basically said, well, like I don't stay like I'm totally paraphrasing this, but like I don't stay angry because I wrote those songs to kind of just get over those situations and get them out of my system, and then moved on to other stuff. So I think some fans were a little bit disappointed with the follow up album because it didn't have the exact same tone as this album. But yeah, like I said, she was not definitely not in a great like mental state at that time because like I said, moved to LA, got robbed at gunpoint, bunch of other stuff. But then kind of wrote these songs as a way to kind of process that. But we're gonna move on into the track list now. All right, so here we go. So Jagged Little Pill, the standard edition, comes in with 13 tracks, and it's about 57 minutes in length. Track 1 is All I Really Want. Track 2 is You Oughta Know, which is an absolute classic. It's the first song I heard from her. I remember seeing the music video in 1995 and kind of being kind of just blown away, thinking it was really cool. And then into the next track. Track 3 is Perfect. Track 4 is the song that eventually like convinced me to buy the album, and track 4 is Hand in My Pocket. So Hand in My Pocket came out, and I really liked You Oughta Know, but Hand in My Pocket was like the music video for it was really cool. It was black and white. I just liked the song a lot. Definitely got stuck in my head, and that's kind of like after hearing You Oughta Know and that totally convinced me to pick the album up. Track 5 is Right Through You. Track 6 is Forgiven. Track 7 is You Learn. Track 8 is Head Over Feet. Track 9 is Mary Jane. Track 10 is Ironic, which is also just a classic. Track 11 is Not the Doctor. Track 12 is Wake Up. And then I believe, depending on what version you're listening to, the album might end with Wake Up. But then after that, we get a different kind of remix of You Oughta Know. And then if you let that track just play all the way to the end, you get a hidden track, because I think that version of You Oughta Know is like 8 minutes long. But there's a few minutes of silence before you get to another hidden track called Your House. And I think she may have played Your House on Modern Rock Live as well. It kind of explained what it was. Yeah, because it says Your House only appears as a hidden track on the CD release. It does not appear on the original vinyl release. So basically, I had the original CD release, so it has it. Apparently, the original vinyl release didn't have it. And this is one of the albums that I've yet to pick up on vinyl. I definitely need to get that bought at some point. I've been kind of holding back on that because I remember seeing a vinyl pressing of it and then reading reviews that it was just not a lot of people had kind of negative things to say about the pressing, like it would like skip or pop or something like that. So I'm kind of waiting to hopefully that was like a manufacturing problem and like maybe that's been fixed, because it's definitely one of my favorite albums of all time, and I definitely should have it on vinyl. Easily, like very much like one of the most kind of important albums, like at least like I said personally to me, because like I said with this album, Jagged Little Pill, Garbage's debut and the Foo Fighters debut, all from the same year, that kind of really like set kind of the tone for like a lot of my musical taste. Kind of like goes back. That's kind of where it all started. Like I was into, like for example, Foo Fighters before I was into Nirvana, for example, stuff like that. And then kind of went back and like be like with Foo Fighters, be like, okay, let's go back and listen to some Dave Grohl's other stuff, which included Nirvana and things like that. But also then like getting into Garbage. And we'll definitely cover those two other albums on future cycles of 1995. 1995, like at least for me musically, is one of the most important years for me personally in music, and I'm looking forward to discussing those other albums once we get back through to 1995. But that's gonna do it for this video. We'll be back again in a few days. We'll probably be doing a movie, and then we'll be doing a video game, and after that we'll cycle into 1996. all the way up through 1999, and then we'll cycle back to 1990 and start all over again. But thank you very much for watching. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one. See ya.